Hey guys, it's me, Rich. Something seismic just happened in Washington, and if you blinked, you might have missed it. Our Senate Majority Leader John Thune, the guy who spent months telling conservatives that election integrity legislation was basically impossible, just completely reversed course. And what you'll see is that this flip didn't just happen by accident. And the strategy they're about to use is either brilliant or it's a real long shot, depending on who you talk to. We're breaking down exactly what happened, how they plan to pull it off, and whether the Save America Act can actually make it through the Senate this time. Let's get into it. Hey guys, welcome to RPW Media, where we cut through the noise and give you the straight story every single time. So hit the bell and subscribe if you haven't. Join us on our live stream tomorrow night, Friday nights at 6 p.m. Eastern. You'll have a good time. All right. So picture this. You've been telling everyone for months that something can't be done. You've said it to reporters. You said it to colleagues. You've basically made it your whole personality. And then suddenly, you show up and say, you know what? Actually, let's do it. That's John Thune in a nutshell right now. And guys, the backstory here is something else. For those of you who haven't been closely following Senator Thune's evolving journey on election integrity legislation, here's a quick version. He's been the guy standing in the way. Not loudly, not dramatically, just quietly pumping the brakes every single time the Save America Act seemed to be gaining momentum. He didn't think a second reconciliation bill was necessary. He didn't think it was appropriate. And as a result, the bill sat in legislative purgatory while conservatives got angrier and angrier. So what changed? Well, let's just say a certain Monday evening at the White House may have had something to do with it. Here's what we do know. President Trump met with a group of Republican senators on Monday night. At that meeting where Senators Katie Britt, Lindsey Graham, Steve Daines, and get this, newly confirmed DHS Secretary Markwayne Mullin attended. And out of that meeting came a two-stage plan that might just be the key to getting the Save America Act across the finish line. Something tells me Thune walked into that meeting with one position and walked out with a very different one. The plan works like this, guys. First, Republicans would pass a clean funding bill for the Department of Homeland Security, just to keep the lights on over there, things like that. Then almost immediately after that, they roll out a second reconciliation bill. That second bill funds ICE enforcement efforts and includes the Save America Act. Clean and simple, two bills, two stages, one very important goal. Now, President Trump reportedly agreed that DHS funding and election legislation could move separately, but with one hard requirement. The election integrity provisions have to follow immediately behind the funding bill using reconciliation. In other words, no funny business, no delaying, no pretending the second bill got lost in the mail or something like that. So after the White House meeting, Thune told the Washington Examiner, quote, "We'll look at all the options on Save America. We've contemplated reconciliation for other things. We got a couple of vehicles available to us. And if we find that that's a viable path that makes sense to get some things done, we will use it." Now, how about that? That must have been a heck of a meeting Monday night. Politico reported that Thune told them that a possible DHS funding agreement created new momentum for a reconciliation effort. So he's serious if he's telling all these outlets. Now, you might be thinking, that sounds like a politician talking out his rear end. And you'd be right, but remember, this is the same guy who was essentially shutting the door on reconciliation for months. So when Thune starts asking about a viable path, conservatives are reading that as a full retreat from his earlier position. And honestly, they're not wrong. Now, let's talk about what the Save America Act actually does, because it's worth understanding why this fight is happening at all. I already did a video on this a little while ago, but it's always good to remind people why this bill is so important for the preservation of our republic. The bill would do two things, and only two things, regardless of what your lying Democrats will tell you. It does two things. It requires documented proof of citizenship when you're registering to vote in federal elections, and it requires voters to show photo identification at the polls. That's it. All the hullabaloo that the Democrats and libnuts created over this thing, and all it does is says, hey, you just got to prove you're a citizen when you register to vote, and then just show ID when you go to vote. You don't have to bring your birth certificate every time you want to vote. Just show your driver's license or some other form of legitimate ID. You can vote. Doesn't stop anyone. Let me tell you something. It's not just illegal aliens that the SAVE Act will prevent from voting. Listen up, guys. It will prevent dead people and people who moved out of the state, pretty much people who would never know that they voted, from voting by a Democratic operative proxy. Democrat operatives, they can't get ID for every single identity that they steal based on the voter rolls matched up to, say, the USPS database and the Social Security database to find out if they moved or they died. According to polling, about 71% of likely voters, they do support this. Let that sink in, guys. 71% of Americans overall, they support it. It's not a fringe position. It's a majority of Americans saying, yeah, show us some ID when you want to vote. And yet here we are fighting about it like it's some radical proposal. The obstacle, as always, has been the Senate. The House already passed the Save America Act, but in the Senate, Democrats use the informal filibuster to block a vote. Because in the modern Senate, if you can't get 60 votes, your bill dies. And in today's climate, good luck getting 60 votes on what's for lunch, let alone anything else. So Republicans are looking at their options, and one of the few available to them is reconciliation. The same process Democrats used to pass the American Rescue Plan in 2021 that didn't rescue a damn thing but cost American taxpayers nearly $2 trillion. Completely passed by a Democrat majority, $2 trillion. And then in 2022, Democrats used reconciliation again to pass the Inflation Reduction Act that was ridiculous. It did not reduce inflation at all. They think that you can bring down inflation by the government spending more money, which is what causes inflation. It was ridiculous. So naturally, Republicans are now saying, wait a minute, Sparky. If reconciliation was fine for all of that, why can't we use it for election integrity? And a fair point if there ever was one. But here's where the Robert KKK Byrd rule comes in. Robert Byrd was a U.S. senator who was a Klansman, and I believe he was a Grand Kleagle, whatever the heck that is, who Democrats actually made majority leader twice. Remember that. The Democratic Party made a Grand Kleagle of the KKK, the majority leader, not once, but twice. Now, under the Byrd rule, anything passed through reconciliation must directly affect federal spending or federal revenue. Oh, no, we can't do election integrity. But wait. It can't just be policy for policy's sake, is what the Byrd rule was saying. It has to have a measurable budget impact. All right, you with me so far? And some senators, including Mike Lee from Utah, who actually wrote the original bill, have raised questions about, would the Save America Act clear that bar? Well, that's where Senator John Kennedy from Louisiana comes in. I love this guy. Kennedy has been the mastermind of the strategy to make this work, and his argument is very clever. He says fraudulent voter registrations often rely on false identity documents, and those false documents can be used to access federal benefit programs, where illegal aliens are using our tax dollars for the freebies that they get because they have a fake ID. Now, programs like the SNAP food program, Section 8 housing, Medicaid, and stuff like that. So now all those programs are legally limited to citizens and certain lawful immigrants with permanent resident status, like a green card, right? So if someone is using a fake identity to vote, that same fake identity might be collecting a lot of government benefits on your dime, and they shouldn't even be here. Guys, under this legislation, voter registration records are also tightened up and identity verification becomes much stronger. False identities become much harder to use across government systems. And when those fake identities disappear, the opportunity to collect federal benefits under them disappears as well. It's awesome. That means less fraudulent spending and fewer dollars floating out of federal programs improperly. Once you frame it that way, guys, the reconciliation rules that require a connection to federal spending suddenly become much easier to satisfy. You gotta love it. Kennedy also points to a federal database called SAVE. That's the Systematic Alien Verification for Entitlement System, which the Department of Homeland Security already uses to verify eligibility for federal programs. How about that? The Save America Act would require states to cross-check voter rolls against this database. Now, I can guarantee you that the Democrats will lose their ever-hating minds over that one because they mine for dead people and people who moved out of the state so they can use their identities to vote. The Social Security system and USPS are federal systems. Because the system already exists and has budget implications, expanding its use could qualify as a budget-related measure under the reconciliation rules. Here's the thing. This isn't just about politics, guys. The polling on election integrity is absolutely staggering. About 83% of likely voters believe ballots should arrive by election day, not election month or election season, election day. Around 84% of independents support voter ID requirements. These aren't partisan numbers, guys. These aren't Fox News viewers sitting in their trucks. No, these are regular Americans across the political spectrum saying the same thing. Make it simple, make it fair, but make it verifiable. That way you start to have respect for our systems again. The politicians blocking this aren't protecting democracy like they say. They're protecting a system that a supermajority of Americans want to fix. And so after months of waiting, after months of Thune saying, it just can't be done, we're finally in a moment where it might actually happen. The next few weeks are critical, guys. Call your senators. Tell them you want the Save America Act passed to save America. If Republican leaders move forward with the reconciliation strategy, the bill could advance even without a single Democratic vote. Imagine that. We saved the Republic. The procedural stars may finally be aligning for us, guys. Whether they actually follow through, wow, that's Washington. But for now, for the first time in a long time, there's actual momentum here. Look, here's the bottom line. The Save America Act isn't some radical piece of legislation. It's common sense voter integrity that 7 out of 10 of Americans support it, guys. They want it. The Senate has been a graveyard for common sense for over a decade, but reconciliation might just be the shovel that digs it back up. Republicans have the votes. The strategy is taking shape, and even the skeptics are coming around. The bright side here is real. If this moves forward, it could be the most significant update to federal election law in an entire generation. And this time, the numbers, the strategy, and the political will might actually line up. So tell me what you think in the comments below. I love hearing from you. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next one.